My name is Gary Smith and I work as a supervisor in a warehouse. I'm tall, broad-shouldered, and strong. I shave my head every couple weeks, and I have a trimmed goatee. I'm sitting in the kitchen waiting for my wife of 15 years, Corinna, to come through the kitchen door. She is wearing her work clothes, a simple business suit. As always, she looks beautiful, and at 40, her beauty has not faded. Yes, she has a few extra pounds, but honestly, she is still a very sexy woman. She stopped in the doorway and started to say something, but fell silent. She noticed my cold expression and my look of concern on her face. I gestured for her to sit down. She placed her briefcase and new shopping bag on the table and then sat down across from me, briefly about my character. I am the kind of person who is sometimes funny, charming, witty, and makes people feel loved and appreciated, or so I am told. I am also the type of person who rarely shows my emotions. Only one or maybe two people in the world know the real me. One of those people is my wife, and as a consequence, she knows my reaction to any thought of sharing it with anyone. It's just not in my DNA. She knows me, and knows of my love for her, and knows that my word is my bond. So her lunch dates are certainly out of character for me. Swingers and people who follow their lifestyle claim that they can share love and lust and control their emotions by having sex with other people. Believe me, 99% of people are emotional beings. People can't turn off their emotions. But I can say that I belong to the 1% of people. My emotional state is tightly controlled, and like I said, only my wife can see the softness underneath the icy shell. She's the only one I let into my heart. Corinna, I want to intercept everything you're about to say. You know me, and you know I won't accept any lies or deceit. Do you understand my words? Gary, I don't really understand what's going on here. But I will never lie to you. I've never lied to you. Besides, you know I can't lie to you. I'm a terrible liar. But yes, I do understand you, my love. She reached out to take my hand. I accepted her hand and squeezed it. That's good, you see. Several of your friends at work have informed me that you may or may not be planning on saying those proverbial words. Honey, we need to talk. Yes, those words. Don't be surprised. You should know that your friends only care about you. At least 4 of your coworkers have written to me. They told me about your lunches with your new head of sales. Well, with Carl, your boss. Yes, I remember you telling me about him starting at your company a couple weeks ago. Gary, please, it was just a couple of lunches last week, 2 lunches to be exact. We ate and drank coffee. I didn't give it much thought. He knows I'm married. I told him about you and your views on fidelity. He accepted them. No, he didn't buy me any gifts or ask me to meet him alone, and even if he had, the answer would have been no. Gary, listen to me, please. I'm grateful for my friends at work. However, I was going to talk to you tonight and tell you about this, but honestly, it's not at all what you think it is. I looked skeptical, and Corinne noticed it. Gary, I told you once that I was willing to die for you. I know how you think, and I know there are no gray areas for you. That's part of your charm, my love. I know how to treat you, unlike many men. Yes, Gary, I know now that Carl is a snake and all the married women in my office know it. 3 men came up to me at work today and told me about his dark side. Now I realize what a conniving asshole he is. It took my wife a moment to calm down. But he's my boss, and apparently good at his job, so I can't say no to him. I know I should have told you about our lunches. It was a mistake not to tell you. She sighed and pulled herself together again. Please believe me, tonight I really was going to tell you about Carl and the dinners. And yes, I was going to say the words every husband or boyfriend fears, but not in the way you think. I want to show you something. This is me and Carl last week. Yes, I started having lunch with him just last week. Today he asked me again, but I refused. Yes, I should have told you all of this earlier. I apologize for that. She pulled out her phone and showed me some pictures of Carl sitting across from her in a cafe somewhere in the city. Then she showed me some pictures of people from work sitting next to their table. They could easily see her with Carl. The time on her phone matched her lunch break. So, this was obviously a public place, and she clearly wasn't hiding anything from her coworkers. Since she started working as an assistant for various people, she always told me when she was leaving the office and when she might be late, often calling me and asking me to pick her up on those evenings when she was working late. Often it was just the two of us on those evenings. She always left the office on time, and she always smelled like her perfume. She never smelled like anyone or anything else. So honestly, she never gave me any reason to question her words or her loyalty. I sighed and relaxed. Well, I'm glad you told me, but in the future, I want you to tell me about all your mistakes before I find out through mutual friends. I don't mind you having lunch with your boss, but I'd like to know about it. Yes, I will always tell you, Gary. I can honestly say that you are the one I love, the one I think about all the time. And yes, Gary, you excite me. No one else does. Anyway, now we've got it all figured out. She stood up, grabbed her Victoria's Secret bag from the table, and pulled out a very beautiful and sexy red and black silk lingerie set. She then pulled out a pair of silk stockings and undressed in front of me. All the while, she looked at me with a slight smile on her face. My smile grew even wider. My wife is a beautiful woman, with long black hair, medium-sized breasts, and shapely legs. She is any man's dream. It took her about 5 minutes to put on her outfit. After she finished dressing, she stood up and let me admire herself. She slowly turned around, showing me around. Corinna walked over to me, sat on my lap, and kissed me, Dot. We kissed, touched, and rubbed against each other for about 10 minutes. We made love, softly and gently, with hugs and kisses. That's how we fell asleep. The next morning, Tuesday, we woke up in each other's arms. Gary, I love you forever. I will always love you. Please don't ever doubt me, my love. Yes. She gasped. We relaxed for a moment, and then we both climbed out of bed and showered. We both got dressed, and Corinne put on her underwear left over from last night. Gary, I want to wear this set every day so it reminds me of you and our night last night. She hurriedly put on her business suit, a stylish jacket pants semi-suit. I put on my usual work jeans, boots, and t-shirt. We kissed at the door and got into our cars. Before getting into the car, Corinna turned to me and said, Gary, why don't you have lunch with me at the cafe Carl and I went to? It's called the Copper Kettle. It's near our office. Be there around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, okay? It's time for you and Carl to meet, she said, smiling. I smiled as well. Are you sure he'll be there? I asked. Oh, yes, he'll be there. I'm sure he'll be excited to meet you. She smiled even wider. Love you, Gary. I'll see you later. Don't be late. We both drove to work. The morning passed quickly, and soon it was time to go to lunch. I found the establishment easily and parked next to it. All the other customers were dressed in casual clothes or suits and skirts. I, on the other hand, was dressed in my work clothes. As I walked through the door, I saw Corinna discussing something with a tall, slender young man. He was wearing a very expensive suit, and his hair was slicked back with lots of hair gel. He looked like a slick salesman. He was standing with his back to me, so he didn't notice me, but my wife did. There were several of my wife's co-workers in the cafe who knew me, and they noticed me too. Some smiled at me and stopped their meal to see what might happen. Just at that moment, I saw my wife pushing back a few tickets. She looked up at me, then looked at Carl. My wife stood up, walked over, and put her arm around my waist. Carl, this is my husband, Gary. Gary, my love, I was just explaining to Carl that you don't approve of me having lunch with my boss. You also don't approve of him buying 2 tickets to the musical. He doesn't have anyone to go with, so he was going to ask me. When you came in, I told him the answer would be no, but he could still ask you. She smiled and pulled me to her. When he turned to look at me, I grabbed Carl's shoulder and squeezed hard. He flinched and tried to pull away, but I pressed him back against the seat. With my free hand, I reached into his coat pocket and looked for his cell phone. I got lucky. I pulled it out and handed it to my wife. I leaned down to his ear and whispered, Carl, I will never let you date my wife. I realized that you had lunch with my wife. That has come to an end. You must know that a married woman is not tolerated, and as a supervisor, you must protect your employee's reputation. Lunch dates are not acceptable. I squeezed her even tighter. So here's how it's going to go down. You're going to stop going on lunch dates with married or engaged women. Don't ask them or pressure them to join you. If you do, I will break every bone in your body. Trust me, I eat people like you for breakfast. I have some very questionable friends from Eastern Europe who are connected to some very questionable people. I squeezed his shoulder again, and he started to whimper. Some of them owe me a favor. One of those favors would be your disappearance, so I'm going to let you go now. You will go back to the office and think hard about your next move. If you do anything to my wife, mentally or physically, my friends will find you. Now get up, pay your bill up front, and enjoy the rest of your day. By the way, most of the customers here work in your building and know what you've been up to. I'm sure they'll agree that I haven't done anything to you, and your shoulder is probably sore from too much squash. I let go of him, and he stood up very slowly. He was shorter than me in height and much slimmer. He looked me over and seemed to realize that he had no chance if he was going to attack me. He started to say something, but changed his mind. He then turned to my wife. He did something so stupid that the customers who had stopped eating to watch the show gave a friendly sigh. Corinna, I apologize. I should not have approached you for these appointments without consulting your husband. However, I am sorry that your husband does not approve of your dating other men. Many wives these days date other men rather than their husbands. I can only assume that your husband's fragile ego will be greatly hurt when he sees you enjoying my company. He is so weak that he followed you here, and his ego has probably cost you your job. He fell to the floor with a resounding thud. His head must have hit the floor, for a moment he lost consciousness. The applause began. Not for me, I didn't hit him, but for my wife. I was very proud of her. The owner of the cafe came over and looked at Carl, and then at my wife and I, who were kissing like teenagers. The owner's name was Graham. Corinna, please accept this lunch as a compliment. That piece of shit will never set foot in this place again. We have cameras in the building, but there was a power outage just 5 minutes ago, so no one saw this poor piece of shit fall and hit his head. Nice kick, by the way. Who taught you that? My husband, a few years ago. He wanted to teach me how to defend myself. At those words, she put her arm around me. Graham pointed to 2 employees who were serving customers. Graham examined Carl's head for bumps, but found none. Then he lifted Carl's eyelids. Carl's eyes responded. You 2 can get rid of this piece of shit. Take him to the car and use his keys. He drives an Audi. Put him in it and leave him there. He turned to them, to a round of applause. Corinna and I sat down at the table, finished our salmon and macaroni salad and the glass of very expensive wine Carl Gadd had ordered. Then we got up and started to leave. But we were stopped by a slender, attractive, middle-aged woman. Corinna recognized her immediately. It was the owner of the company she works for. Mrs. Hawkins, I'm sorry you had to see that. My wife apologized. Mrs. Hawkins hugged my wife, then hugged me. Don't worry, my dear, you did very well. I'm here because several married women have filed complaints against Carl, and I wanted to see if the rumors about him having his eye on you were true. Unfortunately, they are. I'm glad you hit him looking at your husband. I'm sure he would have killed him. Anyway, don't worry about him. He's already fired or will be fired very soon, and don't worry about your job. You work for me now. She smiled at me. Gary, take this girl home and take care of her, but not too much. I want her in good shape tomorrow morning. Now go. We walked hand in hand to our cars and rushed each other home. Corinna had won and was waiting for me in nothing but red and black underwear. Yes, we took care of each other, and yes, she was fine the next day, but she walked a little gingerly. Epilogue. Carl was fired for violating several contracts. Mrs. Hawkins had someone check Carl's work. They found several discrepancies. They also found that he had several harassment cases pending against him. The company did nothing to help him, and he ended up having to pay compensation out of his own pocket. After everything was settled and my wife got a job as a senior assistant to the owner of the company, Mrs. Hawkins, a strange event happened. Carl disappeared one night. He just left town. He left no address and told no one where he was going. He took only one suitcase with him. His family wasn't looking for him. Apparently, he was the black sheep of the family. There were also rumors that he used to have affairs with other married women. They stopped helping him, and no one in the family wanted to get involved with him. So no one, not even his family, started looking for him.